Hi, everybody, and welcome back into the Fox 9 studios. I'm Pierre Noujaim alongside Ahmad Hicks. Another edition of the Vikings Now Podcast, impromptu edition, really, because we need to discuss the serious nature of where the Minnesota Vikings are just 2 weeks into the season, particularly on the injury front. We thought it was going to be bad news at the end of week 2 with all the concussions that we saw. Aaron Jones going off with a hamstring. We'll discuss some of that a little bit later. But, of course, the major injury concern revolves around starting quarterback J.J. McCarthy, who made it through the end of the game despite the ankle injury, but now we know he's going to be out at least on Sunday when the Vikings host the Bengals. But it sounds like this injury could last an additional couple of weeks. We don't know that just yet. The Vikings are scheduled to speak tomorrow. But this is not the news we were expecting to hear yesterday. And now this is throwing a curveball into the Vikings season.
Yes. High ankle sprain for J.J. McCarthy. That's what Adam Schefter reported. I haven't heard from J.J. yet or saw him since that injury took place. But you have to imagine anything, surrounding a high ankle sprain is like 2 to 5 weeks, a minimum. Yeah. And so you're looking at J.J. McCarthy possibly being out not only this contest versus the Bengals on Sunday, but the matchup with the Steelers in Dublin, and then more than likely the next matchup with the Browns in London. Is that something you want to hear right now? Absolutely not.
The fans want to hear that. For sure.
He's missed a lot of football, and this guy needs to be on the football field because the only way they're going to get rid of these growing pains that the Vikings have been going through the last 2 weeks of the season is by getting J.J. McCarthy more reps. So this is not what they need for one of two reasons. One, because J.J. McCarthy needs all the reps he can get. I think we all know that. Secondly, now you're opening up Pandora's box by throwing out Carson Wentz. And if Carson Wentz goes out there, throws for 250 yards in every game, 2+ touchdowns, 0 interceptions, moves this offense up and down the field despite their offensive line woes right now, and he wins 3 football games and your team is 4-1, you pulling that plug and going back to J.J. McCarthy?
I don't see how you can't go back to J.J. McCarthy. I know that you'll be saying, well, we're winning games with Carson Wentz. Now, I don't expect the Vikings to go out there and win 3 in a row with Carson Wentz as their starting quarterback.
That's not what I'm saying. It's just a hypothetical.
And I understand where you're coming from, certainly, and that's a thought process that needs to be thought about down the line because you have Cincinnati, then you have Pittsburgh and Cleveland. Those are the next 3 games. 2 of those games will be in Europe, Pittsburgh and Cleveland.
But those will be like home-like atmospheres for the Vikings, too.
It will. And the other thing you have to consider, and the Vikings haven't said this yet, and there's no indication right now that they're going to put J.J. McCarthy on IR because after the Cleveland game, you have a bye week, which means you can essentially steal a week of recovery and not have to put him on IR because if he goes on IR, he misses 4 games.
Well, this is like essentially him going on IR with that bye week.
Yes, and that's because if you go into the bye week, if he misses 3 games, you're going to the bye week, an extra week of recovery, then you get ready to face the Philadelphia Eagles at home in week 7. So even we know Carson Wentz is going to start on Sunday. We do know that as of right now. He will be the starter.
Yeah.
We're presuming that Max Brosmer is going to be the backup quarterback. Hey, Gopher fans, you have another excuse to watch on Sunday as the Vikings take on the Bengals. But my question now is there a mysterious third quarterback that could enter the fray at some point on a short? You have to make the finances work. You have to look at your roster and see who you're going to cut. But and I know everybody wants to throw out the Kirk Cousins stuff. That's not going to happen, I don't think, at this point, especially financially. The Falcons would have to do something special in terms of eating salary, and Kirk would have to come here on a completely differently structured contract in order for that to happen. But I'm wondering if there's a mysterious third quarterback out there that could be added. I don't know. I'm not optimistic that's going to happen, but I wonder if it's an option.
That's interesting because they have to have a third quarterback, I feel like, on the roster. Yeah, J.J. McCarthy's not going to the IR, but you got to have an emergency third quarterback.
Yeah, you do.
If you're just going out there with Max Brosmer and Carson Wentz, that's a problem. There are no quarterbacks that come to mind off the top of my head where I'm like, man, you should call him. He's going to be a guy that you want to be a backup quarterback in your locker room. He won't be a distraction. He'll be a seamless fit. There aren't too many guys that fit that mold for me. And honestly, I don't know if we should put too much weight into that because I don't know if we want to sign it. Well, I would never want to see whoever they do sign and bring in to be on the football field. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
no, fair. But this is a disaster plan that you have to account
for,
right?
It is. It's one that I haven't accounted for as a podcaster, but I'm sure it's one that Kevin O'Connell and his staff have accounted for. I'm sure a lot of fans would love to see what Max Brosmer could do after what he did in the preseason, but that's another Pandora's box you don't want to open up right now. So it's a tricky, slippery slope right now if you're Kwesi and you're Kevin and trying to figure out how you navigate these next 3 weeks without your quarterback.
Yeah. I just want to touch on Max Brosmer just really quickly. I do think there's something to be said about how they traded for Sam Howell.
Yeah.
That didn't work out, and it didn't work out, and Brett Rippon didn't work out primarily because Max Brosmer leaped those two guys, essentially, to earn a roster spot here with the Vikings. In the preseason, and I know it's preseason, I don't want to put extra emphasis on the preseason, as somebody who covers the Gophers closely, especially last year, there were some throws that I saw Max Brosmer make in the preseason. I said to myself, where's PJ? I need to talk. PJ, where was this? Where was this during the regular season? I mean, did you see the zip he puts on that ball, pushing it down the field? There were some throws that looked really good in the preseason for Max Brosmer. Now, of course, he's going up against guys who are fighting for jobs, and this is not the regular starters on an NFL Sunday. I certainly understand
defenses.
We certainly understand that. And it's going to be, if you ask Max Brosmer to go out there this Sunday and make his first NFL start against the Cincinnati Bengals, it could be a completely different story. But there is a piece of me that is intrigued to see what would happen if Max Brosmer does get in the game.
You know, the one thing that I don't appreciate about all this news, this injury news, and all the narratives that have been created on social media is people out there saying that this injury was an excuse for Kevin O'Connell to bench J.J. McCarthy because of his play in 2 games.
I actually haven't seen that. Has that really been
it's
floated
been
out there?
all over social media.
It's
People
ridiculous.
have been asking other beat writers and stuff here in town,
Absurd.
basically like, is this just, a nonchalant way for him to say that we're benching J.J. McCarthy and going to play Carson Wentz? Come on now, guys.
Absurd.
Like, it's 2 games into the season. Like, I understand the 2 games, the total body of work has not looked good. 7 bad quarters out of 8.
Yeah, that's true.
Wholeheartedly agree with you all. But benching your guy that you drafted 10th overall 2 years ago after 2 games, like, come on now. Like, the sky isn't falling yet. Like, some fans like to make it out to be like, it's still early in the season. Would you like to see J.J. McCarthy be better? Absolutely, especially with all the weapons around him. But they don't have Christian Darrisaw. And I think that's a big problem. So when you talk about injuries this week, will Justin Skule be able to go? He's in the concussion protocol.
Correct.
Will Ryan Kelly be able to go? He's in the concussion protocol. So you're talking about Carson Wentz going out there. Probably not going to have Christian Darrisaw. I've been saying that all offseason, that he was probably going to miss the first 3 to 4 games of the season and maybe come back after that bye. So you're talking about, regardless of who plays quarterback, they're going to have some problems up front.
Well, and they didn't put Christian Darrisaw on IR to begin the season, too.
Yeah.
So he has always been eligible to come back and play at some point, which was an indication to us that they feel that Christian Darrisaw is closer to being ready than maybe some people indicate. That by not putting him on IR. But as you've reported, obviously the first 3 or 4 games, we may not see Christian Darrisaw. And immediately I'm thinking to myself, Carson Wentz, if you're going to turn around and hand the ball off to somebody, it's probably not going to be Aaron Jones this week. If it's going to be Jordan Mason, run right. That's what I'm thinking. Run right, because the left side of this line, if Walter Rouse is your starting left tackle on Sunday, boy, he is going to have to crash course in a hurry, because that's your 3rd left tackle. You have a backup center in Michael Juergens. This could be a disaster waiting to happen for Minnesota. Now, I will say, though, Donovan Jackson, their starting left guard, who was their first-round draft pick, I think, for the most part, has looked pretty good. In Game 1, he looked really good.
He looked great.
Game 2, I thought it was a little bit, that whole line didn't have a good day in Game 2 against Atlanta. But I think there is something there with Donovan Jackson for sure that leads you to believe that even though he is young, he can still be a steady presence at left guard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Donovan Jackson, I think, look, he's a rookie. Like, you don't expect many rookies to just come in and be impact players 17 weeks out of 17 weeks in the National Football League. Like, there will be growing pains like we keep talking about with J.J. McCarthy. So I think that's kind of what we saw with Donovan Jackson. Teams maybe got some film on him in Game 1, said this is how we're going to attack the young guy. And then you're also talking about, like, Ryan Kelly being out. Then you're talking about Justin Skule being the backup. Like, that doesn't make your life easier when you got, those guys surrounding you, when you go from having a Christian Darrisaw in practice and a Ryan Kelly, 2 very experienced, talented players, and then you surround them with backups. And it's kind of like, all right, well, now everybody kind of looks bad over here. You know what I'm saying? So I've said it all along. I thought the Vikings offense will struggle weeks 1 through 8. I think they needed some reps. But kind of the way that I hadn't been thinking about this, but you just made me think about it. Like, my goodness, like, J.J. McCarthy, say, for instance, he misses the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Then he has that bye week. And then the first team you see is Jalen Carter and the Philadelphia Eagles with Nolan Smith. And Cooper DeJean.
Baptism by fire again.
Keon Mitchell. My God.
It's going to be tough.
The growing pains.
It's going to be tough. I want to talk about Carson Wentz just for a quick moment. Carson Wentz spent last year as the backup to Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz is such a... I know in terms of the NFL fandom out there, he's kind of a forgotten about player. But Carson Wentz has always been an interesting story to me because when you go back to the year that Philadelphia won the Super Bowl against New England, that Super Bowl here in Minneapolis, Carson Wentz was on his way to possibly being the most valuable player in the National Football League that year before he got hurt, his knee, before he injured his knee. And Nick Foles came in, and we all know the legend of Nick Foles now. And there are a bunch of 6-year-olds out in Philadelphia named Nick at this point. But Carson Wentz, before he was hurt, was playing at an MVP caliber level, and after that, he never really looked like the same guy after that. What is our confidence level in Carson Wentz right now? Because he just was brought in. He wasn't even a part of training camp. He was just brought in before the season started. What is our confidence level in Carson Wentz being able to lead this offense, not just to a competent showing, but possibly leading this team to a victory?
I think they have enough pieces around him, defensively, offensively, for him not to say lead to victory, but to guide them to victory. Like, do I think this is a guy that's going to be out there and be that Carson Wentz, that former kind of MVP-type player before he tore his ACL? Probably not.
Very likely
not. Is he
not.
A guy that will make some mistakes, make some errant throws, miss some throws? Probably. You go look at his film. But I also think he's a serviceable guy for a couple of weeks. A guy that can get the ball from point A to point B or point B to C. You know what I'm saying? Like, get the ball to Justin Jefferson. Let him go make a play. Hand it off to Jordan Mason. Let him go smash through somebody. And then, utilize T.J. Hockenson when he's available. So, I think things will get easier for him when Jordan Addison comes back because I feel like he opens up a lot offensively.
And this is going to be the last game that Addison misses,
exactly.
by the way.
And so I think that this is, look, I don't think he's going to be a guy that wows people. And I also, I know I said earlier, I created that narrative, what if he plays well? And, then there's, the drama in the building about do you play J.J. McCarthy? I don't think he will go out there and put J.J. McCarthy in danger by any means. I think he's going to be a guy that we'll show fans we got a good, decent backup, but bring J.J. back. Let's see what we have in him. But that being said, I still think he's good enough talent-wise to go out there and go get the job done. I think what a lot of people don't understand, playing quarterback in the NFL is really more mental than it is physical. Because you have to mentally be able to process these defenses. You have to mentally be able to get back up after a tough hit and go lead your team time and time again. And you have to mentally be able to withstand the brutal media and their questions after games and what they're going to, criticize you,
He's the brutal guy.
They're going to ask you hard questions after a game. Why did you make this throw? What were you seeing? Before you even had a chance to evaluate the film. And so I think Carson has been through a lot mentally, and I think he's had a chance to toughen up mentally. But I asked him about J.J. McCarthy, and I said, what's one thing that stands out about him that maybe you caught right away as soon as you got here in your short time? He said his mental fortitude, his mental toughness, his poise under control in the midst of chaos and things like that. He was like, I didn't have that as a young quarterback. And I think when you talk about Carson's success, I think, before he was drafted to a bad team, they kind of started having some success. Then he had that adversity, and maybe he didn't have that mental fortitude to bounce back when needed, and now that's why he's been a journeyman quarterback.
Carson Wentz's job, make no mistake about it, his job now is to keep the team afloat.
Absolutely.
That is his job right now. Try not to make any mistakes right now. Minimize your mistakes out there and keep this team afloat and give your offense a chance to put points on the board. We mentioned Aaron Jones a little bit earlier in the podcast. That's another item of business we need to talk about because if it's a hamstring injury that's going to keep him out, hamstring injuries, you just saw Blake Cashman go on IR with a hamstring injury. We are aware of a piece of information floating out in the Twitterverse out there, the Xverse, I should say, of a fan who just so happened to bump into the one and only Cam Akers. And it's only funny because this was the running joke in the offseason. It's at what point of the season did the Vikings call Cam Akers and bring him in here? It looks like perhaps he is on his way to sign another deal with the Vikings. That would make, if it happens, if it becomes official, that would make his third stint with the Minnesota Vikings, something I don't know if I've ever seen before, something like this. But also, if Cam Akers is in town, that leads me to believe that Aaron Jones could be sidelined for more than one game.
Yeah. I mean, look, the NFL, the world, it's all about who you know. And if the coach can trust you to be where you're supposed to be, reliable, you catch the ball, you will always get a call, especially if you're a veteran in the National Football League. There are tons of veterans at home right now with one of their favorite coaches or a coach that trusts them immensely. Like, look, I'm going to call you if something happens. And I think Cam Akers is that guy. He was with Kevin O'Connell in Los Angeles. He's familiar with the scheme. He's a guy that doesn't need to come in and need 2 weeks to get acclimated to the playbook. So, like, that's Cam Akers' job right now. But that being said, I think it also says a lot about the running backs they have on their roster and who they lack trust in. Xavier Scott, Ty Chandler's also dinged up. He's not available right now. So you need someone to come in who can pass protect because you don't know what you have in a Xavier Scott. And any running back after that, you don't know what you have anyway. Sure. And so you're not trying them out there. And so I think that's why you go get a Cam Akers. So if those reports are true that he's in Minnesota, well, he's probably out at TCO working out right now, taking a physical. And if he passes his physical, if the workout looked good, then I'm pretty sure we'll see some news tomorrow that says they signed him, and then we'll get a chance to talk to him again. So
And we need to make clear, too, just like Ahmad was saying, nothing is official as of right now in terms of Cam Akers. We just have seen photographic evidence that he is at the MSP airport, and that's all we've seen so far.
And I shot him a text just to see what was going on. He didn't respond back, which means he's probably a little tied up, a little occupied right now. So I guess only time will tell. But what this does say is that they need some experience behind Jordan Mason because you're talking about a guy who's still new in this offense. And, you know, he got dinged up last year carrying the load in San Francisco and had to miss some time. So you got to have somebody that's back there that's serviceable, that you can trust. If, you know, the game's on the line and Jordan Mason's dinged up, you need somebody to go in and go pick up the right blitz protection. Cam Akers will be that guy if he does get signed.
Injuries are certainly part of the game, and they really dictate how a lot of teams' seasons go. I mean, it's cliche, but it's absolutely true. I mean, you have to prepare for life without certain guys in the NFL. Last week, Minnesota had life without Andrew Van Ginkel. That's a player that they're continuing to monitor. He was out with a concussion last week. Hopefully they get him back. Jeff Okudah did not play last week as well. Hopefully they get him back. We're still wondering when Harrison Smith is going to start to come around and get back in the lineup as well. The Vikings return to practice tomorrow. What are some of the things that we're looking at tomorrow when Kevin O'Connell and company take the podium?
You're going to see who's out there. You're going to see who's available. Going to see who's dressing.
Ready.
Yeah, I think Harrison Smith, I think there's a good chance that he may be able to go. You know, like you said, if he was going to be on the IR, he would have missed 4 games. They didn't put him on the IR. So he's told us that it's all about just getting back in shape, getting back in football shape. So I would have to imagine that he's close. But when asked about that last week, he said, I've never been in this position, so I don't know how long it's going to take. So that's what we'll be looking at. We'll be looking at the secondary. Is Jeff Okudah going to be back out there, or will it be Dwight McClellan again? I mean, that didn't seem to be a problem for the Vikings this past week. Like, you didn't have to bring up Nudie and say, like, oh, man, like, he was a problem. So I don't think cornerback is really an issue. But I think offensive line, you want to see who's out there. You want to see if Ryan Kelly's back out on the practice field. You want to see if Justin Skill's back out there. Hard to imagine they will be, because I feel like when guys get placed in the concussion protocol, especially after a night primetime game, they're typically not playing that following week.
I think that's fair.
So that means you're probably going to have a backup center, third string left tackle in. Like, so Christian Darrisaw, I won't pay too much attention to that. When I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, he just told me, like, I just need, you know, a couple more weeks. He was like, it's not that it's anything mental or physical. He was like, it's just a long season. He was like, so I want to make sure that when I'm out there, I'm not having to go back in the training room for extra treatment because I'm sore, things like that. He was like, when I'm ready to go, I want to be ready to go for the full season.
While we still have a few minutes, let's talk about this weekend's matchup. Speaking of teams that could be in the running to potentially call the Falcons and inquire about Kirk Cousins, the Cincinnati Bengals are coming to town, and they're going to be coming to town with Jake Browning, a former Minnesota Vikings quarterback, in tow as their starter. And we talked about this on Vikings Now a couple of days ago. 2 years ago, if you put on the tape from Jake Browning, he's not Joe Burrow, and I totally understand that, but he torched the Vikings a couple of years ago, and he played well enough to keep them in the thick of things in the playoff stretch. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they went 4-3 down the stretch, did Cincinnati with Jake Browning. Of course, you'd rather have Joe Burrow in there. But we talked about this on Vikings Now a couple of days ago. Just because it's Jake Browning and not Joe Burrow does not make me sit here and think that the Vikings are catching some sort of break. You still have arguably the best wide receiver in the game, one side. You have maybe the game's best number 2 receiver on the other side in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. You have a guy in Chase Brown who can not only run the football but is great at catching passes out of the backfield. Right. This offense is still pretty good, despite the fact that their offensive line, for whatever reason, they never seem to want to address. I don't know why. But this is a team that can still come in here and is capable of winning this game with Jake Browning at quarterback. Now we've got the Browning versus Wentz. I saw somebody joke and say, hey, you should absolutely flex this game to Wednesday morning. That would be, I mean, that was not bad. Whoever that was, shout out to that guy. But This is an intriguing matchup of two teams who Cincinnati's sitting there at 2-0. Both teams, even though they're it hasn't been a disastrous start for either team, but it almost feels like this is a desperation game for both teams, considering the injury factor that both teams are facing.
Yeah, confidence-wise for the Cincinnati Bengals.
More so for the Vikings, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals are a good team, and they have a lot of talent, but offensively, like you just mentioned, that offensive line is atrocious. And you talk about pairing that with the good revamped defense from a couple of years ago, because you're talking about Brian Flores came in that first year when they played Cincinnati. I was there for that game. He had a Caleb Evans as a starting corner. Who else was the starting corner that year? It's Byron Murphy.
2 years ago it wasn't Gilmore. It wasn't Gilmore. That was last year. Who was the offensive corner?
See, you see what I'm saying? This is what Brian Flores had to work with. You
Fabian Moreau wasn't in there.
No,
was he?
He was not here at that time.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Like, Caleb Evans was the corner who got beat by T. Higgins on a jump ball.
Was Cam Dantzler still on the team? No, I think he was cut by that point.
You see what I'm saying, Pierre? Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
His interior line was who at that time 2 years ago?
For Cincinnati?
Harrison Phillips. Who else?
Oh, for us, Harrison Phillips and
was Dalvin Tomlinson still there? I think Dalvin was gone.
I don't remember if he was. I know Jordan Hicks was that linebacker 2 years ago.
Jordan Hicks was that linebacker.
Let's see, who's along the defensive line? It might have been Dalvin.
No, Dalvin's gone. He's been gone for. Yeah, this will be the third.
Harrison Phillips, God, I'm going down memory lane. I can barely remember what happened yesterday.
Do you get where I'm going?
Yeah, I do. Yes.
There was not a lot of talent on the field defensively for the Vikings in that matchup. Way more talent on the field right now for the Vikings and Brian Flores to work with the backup quarterback, with the bad offensive line, with the revamped interior defensive line, and maybe an Andrew Van Ginkel back. Like, the Vikings should be able to win this game. This game does not concern me. Okay. I think that the Vikings, as Kevin O'Connell said during training camp, we need to be able to win in multiple ways this season, whether it's leaning on our offense, passing or running, whether it's leaning on our defense and them carrying us and things like that. I think this is one of those games where the defense will have to carry them, and I think they are more than capable of doing that, especially if you got an Isaiah Rodgers and Byron Murphy that are able to go out there and slow down Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, because you're not stopping Jamar. Yeah, you're not stopping Jamar.
I'm only checking my phone right now because I want to see what the line is, because I'm curious to know.
It's like 2.5 right now, Vikings.
Is it 2.5 for the
Vikings? It's like 2.5.
What time is that game? Or is that game even on the board?
It's 12 o'clock.
Right now, I'm not even seeing that game. Oh, here it is. It's a 3-point spread right now with the juice a little bit towards Cincinnati at this point. One thing I can never, I haven't been able to figure out, and we just touched on it a moment ago, is why the Cincinnati Bengals. I know this is not a Bengals podcast, but this is one of those things where you have Joe Burrow behind, at quarterback, and you've invested so much money in Joe Burrow.
Because I know where you're going with this, and I have an answer.
This lack of awareness in terms of putting financial resources into your offensive line to ensure that you protect your biggest investment, that is something that has just absolutely blown my mind.
Because their general managers and their owner can't put aside they can't put aside the feelings that they have for other players, like a Trey Henderson.
Yeah.
Very, very, very good player. Shamar Stewart, who you draft first round overall. But my thing is like this. You pay Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow advocated for both of his boys, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase.
Correct.
He advocated for Trey Hendrickson to get paid.
Yeah. Well,
where's
hard
the
to argue with that.
Where's the money to go around for an offensive line?
Yeah.
When you're paying think about this. You get what, 80, how much? Like $85 million a year? $86 million?
Yeah.
And maybe half of that money is going to 3 players on offense and 1 player on defense.
I will still argue, even though this is no disrespect to him. I think he's a heck of a talent, and I would love to have him on my team. But I thought paying T. Higgins was irresponsible for Cincinnati.
Well, if you look at the details, it's really just this season where he's getting a lot of that cash.
Yeah, and that's guaranteed money. When you look at money in terms of NFL players, guaranteed money is the thing.
But it's where the Vikings were when they had Kirk Cousins here.
Yeah.
They can never go out and go get the rest of the players that they needed to complement their football team because you were hamstrung by paying a quarterback.
I would pay Jamar Chase. I would pay Trey Henderson. Yes, I know that still leaves you a little cash strapped when it's talking about building your offensive line. But I thought in terms of what you spent and what you indicated to the rest of the team of we're going to pay T. Higgins as well is I thought that was a little bit irresponsible because I thought those financial resources could be better suited off. Listen, to me, no disrespect, to me, wide receiver is easier to replace than it is offensive line. Look at the Vikings right now. Your backups, your depth at offensive line is a hell of a lot more important to me than your depth at wide receiver. you have to have some of those special guys. You do have one of those special guys in Jamar Chase. Again, no disrespect to T. Higgins. He's a heck of a player. I would love to have him on my team. But given how that team is structured right now, the financial resources that were dedicated to T. Higgins as opposed to looking to upgrade the offensive line for Joe Burrow, to me, is irresponsible.
Well, thank God for the Vikings defensive line's sake that they don't have to worry about a revamped, expensive offensive line. They get to go after these guys, the guys that aren't getting paid a lot of money, the guys who put Joe Burrow's health in jeopardy every season, it seems like, and they get to get after him this weekend, and that's why I'm confident that this week will be a wash. I think the Vikings take care of it because I think their defense leads them to victory. I think they make Jake Browning's life miserable at the bank, and then I think then we can start to worry about, all right, now we're going up against a good defense in the Pittsburgh Steelers. What are you going to do? But we'll save that conversation for next week. But right now, Vikings without Joe Burrow. Yes, the Bengals are without Joe Burrow. The Vikings without J.J. McCarthy. They'll also be without Aaron Jones, more than likely.
Very likely.
And probably without Ryan Kelly and Justin Sewell. That's a little premature for me to say that, but more than likely that's where it's pointing to. So you're talking about a very dinged up offense, especially you're missing Jordan Addison. So you're talking about 5 out of 11 players that you counted on being there before the season, not being there. That being said, I still think they win this game, and I think the defense leads them.
Keep in mind the first injury report comes out tomorrow, and if you're a fan, that's certainly something you're going to want to monitor the rest of the week. Injury reports on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We will have a better idea of who might be available to go when the Minnesota Vikings try to move to 2-1 as they host the Cincinnati Bengals this Sunday at US Bank Stadium. For Ahmad Hicks, I'm Pierre Noujaim. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Vikings Now podcast.